Do you have questions about growing potatoes? Well, today we're going to answer questions like, when do I plant my potatoes? How do I plant my potatoes? When do I harvest them? How do I know they're ready to be harvested? What tools do you need to harvest your potatoes? And what do you do after you get them out of the ground? What do? You got to dry them and prepare them for storage. We're going to talk about all those today, and I may think of some other things. So welcome to Do It Yourself with Wayne. Our channel is all about teaching you how to do things yourself to save money, and growing your own food is a big part of saving money and living a better life. I'm going to start by talking about planting your potatoes. Now this bed, let's see if I get the correct hand, right there, those are white potatoes. They're not ready to be harvested yet, but I got video of where I planted those, so I'm going to show you a little bit of that right now. Have you ever wanted to plant potatoes but didn't know how to get started? Well, in this video, I'm going to teach you what you need to know about planting potatoes. So today we're going to plant these potatoes. We're going to show you how we do it. And to start with, we bought our potatoes at a local garden center. And several days ago, we went and we cut them up. Now you can see that little sprout right there is called an eye on a potato. So when you cut your potatoes, and you need to cut them if they're any size. If they're small like this one, maybe you don't cut them. But if they're larger, you do. And what you want to do, you see this? I mean, that looks terrible on the back side where I cut it. Okay? But what you do is you cut your potatoes so that every piece has at least one, hopefully two of those little eyes starting to sprout. And then you set them out for a couple of days to let that cut part dry. Now that's very important, to let that cut part dry. If you don't, your potatoes are more likely to rot in the ground. You'll be more successful if you cut them like that and let them dry for 2 or 3 days before you plant them. Now I've got this one really nice potato, but it's only got one eye on it, so I didn't cut it. It was probably my biggest potato, but it only had one eye, so I didn't cut it. And then I had smaller ones like this little guy. I did cut him because he had a bunch of eyes. So like I said, don't cut them unless you can have at least one, hopefully two eyes on each piece. Now in my soil, I'm going to be planting right here in this half of my raised bed. You may not have a way to test your pH of your soil. If you do, that's great. Potatoes like something between about 4 and 6.5 or so. If you don't have a way to test your soil pH, there are kits you can get. I've got videos online about a tool that I purchased for doing soil tests. It's a really nice tool, but if you're not gardening much, it's hardly worth spending the money on it. But there are light or inexpensive tools that you can get to test your pH. And I would suggest that you do that at least a little bit. In my case, my soil is a little bit close to neutral. It's close to 7 on the pH scale. And the potatoes like it a little bit lower than that, a little more acidic. Most of your garden things like your soil pH to be like between 6.5 and 7. But the potatoes are different. Blueberries like it a lot more acidic than that. So I'll be adding some sulfur to the soil, and that's a slow process, but it will in time lower the pH. So anyway, let's get started planting these potatoes. First off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dig 3 little rows right here, about 6 inches deep. I'm going to put the potatoes in the bottom. Then I'll cover them up with some fertilizer in there, and then I'll water them in and let them do their thing. So let's get going. Have you ever been confused about what kind or how much fertilizer to use when you plant something? Well, the only way to know for sure is to have a soil test done. Your local county agricultural extension agency should be able to do that for you. You send in samples, they'll test it, send you results back in usually 2 to 3 weeks. But for most people, it's just really not necessary. You probably got an idea of what kind of soil you got. If it's pretty good, it doesn't take a lot. If you're just broke ground, what I would recommend you do, depending on your soil, maybe add some peat moss. Certainly add some cow manure. That's really good stuff. And in my case, I don't need any of that because this bed's been amended quite a bit. But I did add some sulfur, probably about 2 cups in this bed. That'll help reduce the pH level of my soil. I also added some Epsom salt. That'll add potassium and some sulfur, a few things. That will help with the nutrients that the plants need. And then this is tomato tone, but it's just a good basic fertilizer, and it's what I had. And it's about the numbers, the NPK, which is like 10, 10, 10, that's your NPK numbers. It's about the numbers that I need. I will be adding more nutrients and fertilizer when the plants start emerging from the soil. But for now, that'll be fine. I spreaded this out, about a cup each of these two, and maybe 2 cups of the sulfur, because the sulfur reacts very slowly over time. I won't be adding any more of that this year, unless it's late in the fall or something. But then I took my hoe and I stirred all that up really good, and now I'm ready to plant my potatoes. And because this is narrow and raised beds, I don't really have a good way to make my trenches and pull the soil over to leave a trench. So I'll be doing 1 trench at a time, just to make it easier to, well, I might do 2 and then do the middle one at the end. But anyway, I can't do all 3 rows at one time, because then I wouldn't have anywhere to put the soil that I pull out to make the trench. So let me get my bags out of the way and we'll start digging some trenches. Now on the far side over there, I'm gonna go kind of close to my onions, because they'll be harvested long before these potatoes are ready. So the potatoes won't really encroach into where they're at. My goodness, it's got a big weed there. Actually, I think that was a turnip. That was our winter crop that we had here. But you want to get you a nice trench, about 6 inches deep or so. About like so. Now I'm going to go ahead and do one on the other side. After digging my trenches, I decided to just go with 2 trenches, because if I did 3, they're just going to be too close together. But anyway, that's what I'm going to do. And when you plant your potatoes, remember the eye that I showed you? Always plant them so the eyes are facing up. And just kind of push them into the soil a little bit. 6 or 8 inches apart is all you need. Now I'm going to try and spread mine out so that about half of my potatoes go on each side. So the spacing may be a little bit different, but you can do whatever works for you. But like I said, the main thing is to make sure you plant them with the eyes pointing up. Now, the sun's killing me here. It's straight that way. But anyway, I got my potatoes in here. Like I said, I just kind of pushed them down into the dirt a little bit as I planted them. Now I'm going to take this dirt in the middle and just pull it over them, and I'll water them good. And that's all I'm going to do for now. Next, we'll be coming back when they're coming out of the ground, and we'll talk about what to do when they start sprouting. These potato plants are way past the point of needing to be healed. And when I talk about healing, I'm talking about bringing mulch or dirt or something up around the base of the plants. As you can see, these plants, these are some of my white potatoes, Yukon Gold, I think, not sure. They might be Kennebec, one or the other. And they're getting close to time to harvest, because you can see the plants are starting to fall over. So I've pulled them back a little bit so you can see the base. But if you don't heal them, what will happen is down here around the base, if a potato gets close to the surface where the sun can hit it, it'll turn green. And that, if it does turn green, you should not eat that potato. It can be unhealthy. If you want to eat it, you can, but just make sure you peel the green parts off, because the green part and the peeling is the part that is really not good for you. But you know, when your potato plants start coming up out of the ground, it's best to put mulch around the base of them, or pull dirt from, you know, out in this area up around the stems, so that those potatoes that are growing, you know, shallow don't end up at the surface. Normally potatoes will mature in 70 to 80 days. It's been probably closer to 100 days since these red potatoes here were planted. So they should be mature and ready to be harvested. Another way you can tell, you may not notice it so much, but the plants are laying down more. They're not standing up like they were. And they're also starting to turn yellow. That's other indications that they're ready to be harvested. Ideally, it's best to harvest your potatoes when the ground is good and dry. Right now mine is not, but you know, we've got to deal with what we've got to work with. We've had a lot of rain this year, and I need to get these things up. So there's another tip. It's best to harvest when the ground is good and dry, but sometimes you just don't have that option. Now let's talk about the tools you need to harvest your potatoes. This is a garden fork. I use this a lot of times harvesting my potatoes, particularly the white potatoes, because they tend to be a little bit larger. My grandparents, they would plant in a field, actually plowed with an old horse, and that's how they did their garden, but they had quite a garden. And they would plow down the rows of potatoes when they're ready to be harvested with what they would call a turn plow or a center buster or something like that, which would loosen up the soil. And then they would use this tool, which is they called it a potato digger. Normally it would have a handle here, but the handle's rotted out. I still have their tool, I just don't have the handle. But it's great for digging through the loose dirt to get your potatoes out. In my case today, I'm going to start with my garden fork, but I'm going to use this a lot because with the red potatoes, they tend to be smaller. And I'll have a lot of potatoes that are barely bigger than a good-sized marble. And I want to preserve those potatoes because they're good to cook with things like a bunch of green beans. You put them in and cook them with some green beans, and that's good. So anyway, I'll be using the shovel a lot. The next thing we need is a way to get the potatoes out of the dirt. Well, I got my sifter over here, and I got a video about building this sifter, how I did it, how I use it, and different things. If you're interested in that, I'll put a link in the description. But we'll be using this sifter to get even the small potatoes out so we don't miss any. Got neighbors walking by, walking their dog. It's pretty cool. But anyway, those are some of the tools you will need to harvest your potatoes. I'm going to start by showing you a close-up of digging a few of the potatoes with my potato digger. Now, I'll dig a few out from right here a few days ago to see what they looked like. But if you just get something to get under your potatoes and raise them up, just kind of jostle the dirt a little bit. As you can see, this soil is just real dirt. It's still damp. It's real bad. And like right there is one of our little potatoes. That's kind of the size we're going to be looking for here. There's one of the plants. We'll throw that out to the side. There's another one. There's one. There's one. That one was deeper. There's a nice one. But because this soil is so damp and so wet, it just, if you press it, it just sticks together. That's why I'll be digging this out and putting it on my sifter so we can find all those little potatoes better. And I do have some in here that'll be smaller than what I just showed you. And I just missed one. Oh, there's a nice one there. That's a good little potato right there. So anyway, that's why we'll be using the shovel to dig them out. And so let's get on with that. Now just as a side note, one thing I haven't done yet is pull my irrigation lines out. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull those out right quick. I've got drip irrigation that I use in my garden. So I pull these lines out to get them out of my way. If you're interested in drip irrigation, I'd also have videos online about that, and I'll put a link in the description. Now another thing I did, I got a container to put my potatoes in. That one's kind of dirty, but we don't wash your potatoes when you dig them out. And I'm going to start over here at the end where I've already harvested some potatoes, so we won't be getting many right here. But I do want to dig this dirt out and just kind of sift through it and look for potatoes. A lot of earthworms in there. Kind of hate disturbing them, but you do what you got to do sometimes. There's a nice one there. Like I said, not getting too many right here because I've already dug through this one time. There's a small one. Got a mess of them here. I see 4 over there I turned up that didn't even get in the shovel. That was a good scoop right there. More there. And those behind me, I'll put those in the compost bin. Just all kinds of potatoes in here, and I'm just getting started. Well, that's what I've got so far, and I'm just getting started good. There's one of the nicer ones. But as you can see, I'm maybe not even a quarter of the way through my raised bed of digging these things up, and that's a lot more potatoes right there than what I started with, so I consider this very successful. At this point I've finished digging all my potatoes, and I got a couple of tips for you here. But for starters, I got a 5-gallon bucket almost full of these little red potatoes, and we started with a little bundle about like this. I don't know how many there were, I didn't count them or weigh them or anything. But we got a 5-gallon bucket almost finished, or almost full, with these potatoes. Now a couple things I want to mention. When you're digging, if you cut a potato with whatever you're digging with, I'll show you a couple of these up close. Okay. See that? If you happen to cut into one of your potatoes when you're digging them, make sure you set those aside. Don't put them in with the rest of your potatoes. These need to be used first because they'll go bad if you don't. Now my next tip is, there's a lot of dirt on these potatoes. That in there is particularly bad, I guess. But part of that is because my soil was damp when I had to dig these. But as I said earlier, we've got more rain coming, and I don't want to leave these in the ground any longer. I'm afraid they'll start to rot in the ground. But don't wash your potatoes before you dry them. You will need to dry them before you use them. They'll preserve longer that way. We'll be showing you that here in a few minutes, but that's my 2 tips at this point. If you cut into a potato while you're harvesting them, save that one and use it first, because it'll go bad quicker than the others. The other tip is don't wash them, because if you wash them, they'll go bad quicker. All right, let's move on. At this point, we've got our potatoes laid out for drying. This is the same sifter that you saw in the garden a little bit earlier in the video. We just put some cement blocks out here to get it up off the ground a good bit, up high enough that it won't get rained on or anything here under my carport. And we'll let them sit there and dry for a week or so. Then we'll put them in mesh bags and store them in the closet of the back room that stays relatively cool. So basically that's my tips for raising potatoes. If you've got tips that I missed or things that you would do different, post us a comment and let us know how you do things. We're always interested in hearing comments from our visitors to our YouTube channel. And at this point, I'd just like to say we'd really appreciate it if you click like on my video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with your friends if it's appropriate. So thank you for visiting, and we hope you have a great gardening season.